Wrestling is life. Wrestling is life. Wrestling is life. Is wrestling.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Wrestling is Life is Wrestling with Cody Diener. I am Cody Diener, and I am a professional wrestler. I'm a professional wrestling producer with TNA Wrestling. I'm a professional speaker traveling all across the nation, telling my story to youth. I am also a father to 4 children and a husband to a beautiful wife, and this is my podcast. This is a very special edition of the podcast because we don't have one guest, we don't have 2 guests, we have 3 guests. We have the entire Rest When Dead skeleton crew. Crazy Steve, Jody Threat, Jake Something, all with me on today's show for this week and next week. I'm super pumped. It's my very first time having multiple guests on the show. We recorded it live together at the Hustle Culture Fitness Center in Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan. We were there on some top secret Rest When Dead CEO Fit business, and we had a blast. And not just a blast, we had a killer conversation, and you're going to be listening to the first part of that conversation here today. So thanks for joining us. Before we go any further and talk about how wicked awesome this conversation is, let's talk about the sponsor, which is the reason we were even all together in the same room in Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan. That's because of Rest When Dead clothing. Go to Rest When Dead clothing on Instagram or restwhendead.ca to shop their entire collection. We've got a whole bunch of new items that just dropped over there. If you need some supplements to get jacked like one of today's guests, Jake Something, then go to ceofit.ca. You're going to be hearing some more reviews from the skeleton crew as well as myself on this show in the coming weeks. They've got all the top of the line supplements at super cheap prices, at super cheap shipping as well. All your supplementary needs are over at ceofit.ca. Other ways that you can just support me to help bring this show to you for free each and every week, you can go to prowrestlingtees.com/Cody Diener. Get yourself a wicked awesome t-shirt. You can go to cameo.com/Cody Diener. Get yourself a personalized video for you or a loved one. Better yet, go to patreon.com/Cody Diener. You can go get the full conversation early and ad-free, not just this week's episode, but you can even get next week's episode already right now at patreon.com/Cody Diener, both the audio and video of the full conversation with the skeleton crew, as well as 2 bonus stories. That's right, not 1, but 2 bonus stories. One of those bonus stories is from Crazy Steve, and it's freaking hilarious. It involves wrestling, and if you like doo-doo humor like Jody Threat does, she loved this story so much that I didn't see her full of joy until Steve told this story on the podcast, and you can only get that story as a bonus story over on patreon.com/Cody Diener right now, but you can get it for free by signing up for a free trial. So you can get a free trial. What did I say? Oh, yeah. Patreon.com/Cody Diener. If you haven't heard yet, head on over there for some cool bonus stories and early and ad-free conversations with all of my guests. Now, let's just talk about today's guest. We've had Crazy Steve on the show. He is somebody who's probably one of the most listened to guests on my show. We did a 3-parter with Steve right when I started the show. For those of you that didn't listen to those 3 episodes, you should go listen to those, download those right now. Steve is an amazing human being. He's got quite the story to tell in his life, and we went into detail into his life story. He was born legally blind and has been able to ascend the ranks of professional wrestling and have a job wrestling professionally on television for a number of years. It's really miraculous. He came from nothing, overcame so much in his life, and I'm proud to say that he's a partner with Rest When Dead clothing and part of the skeleton crew along with myself, and also someone who else is close to me, my cousin on TV, but really not by blood, but just by awesomeness, Jake something. He's also on the show. He's more than just a jacked meathead. He might look like a jacked meathead, and he will not be angry at me saying that. This dude is jacked, and he's awesome. He's my cousin. Not really, but on TV, he's been my cousin, and he feels like even more than my cousin. Like I said, he's a family member, both, by sheer will, by choice, and family member of Rest When Dead. He's got quite the story to tell and has some really enlightening and insightful things to say on this week's episode. And we are also joined by Jody Threat. She is one half of the TNA Wrestling Knockout Tag Team Champions. Unfortunately, now former, but man, she's already gotten gold and she hasn't been in TNA that long. She has a really cool story to tell as well, and we get into that in part one here. We get into the story of everybody here on the show, and when I did this, I wasn't sure how I was going to do it. I usually prepare fairly well for my guests, and I decided, when I have 3 people on the show live, it's too hard for me to do research with all 3 people and try to get to these questions. And we just get along so well as a team. I'm like, you know what? I'll start with a question. We'll see where this conversation goes. We'll see if it's good. Hopefully it is. Hopefully my listeners will enjoy it. And man, this conversation couldn't have been any better. We go deep. It's insightful. It's exactly what I want all conversations on this show to be about, because this isn't just a wrestling podcast. It's a life podcast. And whether you're a wrestling fan of any of the people that are on the show, or you're a business owner, or you're just somebody that's trying to get through life on this crazy thing we call Earth, and you might need some insightful lessons or things that you can just take away to help you get to the next phase of your life, well, this show's for you. And you're going to get it from 4 professional wrestlers who come from 4 different backgrounds, 4 different walks of life, but have a mutual love for professional wrestling and a mutual success, as we are all in TNA Wrestling, but we all have got a story to tell. And I think you're going to enjoy the stories that we have to share on today's show. So without further ado, let's get to part 1 of today's episode with the Rest When Dead Skeleton Crew, myself, Crazy Steve, Jake Something, and Jody Threat.
Wow.
Oh, yeah.
That was
That's
really
sweet.
in sync.
Let's do it.
Like we just had a really sick tag match.
We're going to start this with a cheers.
Yes.
For our audio listeners that are not seeing what's happening right now, I am here with the Skeleton Crew, Rest When Dead Skeleton Crew. I'm going to need this energy drink. I can't even say the name of our crew. Just a second.
It went straight to my brain. I felt it through my nostrils.
Yeah.
Boss.
All right. So we are here on some top secret, not so top secret business anymore, here in Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan. At the Hustle Culture Fitness Club, which is also the home of CEO Fit. You hear me talk about this on the show, ceofit.ca. And Rest When Dead Clothing. And we got the Skeleton Crew here of myself and 3 wicked awesome guests. Let's start over here to my right. Who we talking to here?
I am Crazy Steve.
Crazy Steve, a previous guest on the show. Actually, probably my top-rated guest on my show, by the way.
Wow.
Yes.
Whoa, what's up? Okay.
Yeah.
I do have 3 episodes.
Yeah,
so, I mean, that's one episode more than most of your guests.
It's true. So your check's in the mail, Steve.
Yeah, okay.
He's fluffing the numbers, I think.
And then to my left is...
Oh, that's me. Jody Threat.
Jody Threat. You don't have to look into the camera, Jody. You can...
So awkward. I don't know what's happening.
If you're only listening to this, go over to @Codediner Podcast on YouTube and just watch Jody just nervously stare into the camera.
You said playing at the camera? You froze. I don't know what to do with my hands.
Yeah.
I'm not
Jody
seen Wayne's
Threat.
World. I'm playing Garth right now. You know, he's like, what?
Playing the character.
And then beside Jody, the smartass that's teasing her, and you don't know who it is yet. If you're just listening to this, is who?
My name is Jake something.
Oh man. Yeah, this is really good audio content. Just four
Sorry.
people laughing in the microphone, which I'm totally okay with.
Are we allowed
So-
to swear?
Oh yes, we can
Okay,
swear.
thank goodness.
Yep, shit, we can do that if you want. But I've never. This is a new thing for me. I've never interviewed multiple people at a time. It's always been just one person at a time. A lot of it's been like on screen. So this is my first time, and we just want to, before we even start and go any further, we all want to say thank you to Aaron York, who is the
Yes.
president
Yes.
and owner of the Reaper Fitness Group. He owns Hustle Culture Fitness. He owns CEO Fit. He owns Rest When Dead Clothing. And we are all in a room together right now in Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan because of Aaron.
Yeah.
So
What a guy.
what a guy. Let's start with our thoughts on Aaron. How do you sum up Aaron in one word?
Great kisser.
Oh, yep. Okay. Great kisser. I was going to go a little more PG and just say great hugger. Okay, but he's an awesome dude. Very passionate.
Yeah.
He's also jacked, and that's all I need to say.
Yeah,
Very
Jake
jacked,
appreciates
yeah.
that. He's super jacked. That's
awesome.
But I
Big
think
upper body guy.
Yeah.
For sure.
it's an upper body biz,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But I mean, you actually bring up a point there, Jake. It's important because he's someone he has a fitness group, so he's pushing supplements, he's pushing a gym, he's pushing a clothing line that's directed towards fitness folks. And I think there's nothing that kind of bothers me more. I shouldn't say the most bothersome, but something that does bother me a lot is when you go to a gym and you see the personal trainer training people and they're like completely out of shape.
Yeah.
And like they're not living what they're selling.
You could essentially, like, case in point, see that they don't care about what they're doing. You know, and I guess it depends on what your goals are, right? But if I were coming in to try to get some professional help with something, and I see firsthand that they don't practice what they preach, then why would I?
Posers.
Yeah, exactly.
But he clearly is practicing what he preaches.
Absolutely.
So.
Yeah.
I've lifted with him twice already, and it's been awesome.
You lived with him twice. I didn't even know that.
Yeah, we snuck it in.
Yeah, sweet. All right. Yeah. No, he believes in everything that he's selling, and he's the reason that he's been like my OG sponsor since I started doing the show, and there's a reason for that. I decided that when I was going to start doing this show and start trying to find people to, come on board as sponsors or people that were going to be partners with the show, I wanted to make sure that I believed in the product or the person or whatever, or the business that I was partnering with. And as soon as I started talking with Aaron and kind of got a feel for what he was all about, he was saying he's only going to use quality clothing and he's going to use local, and then he also gives back to local. Yeah. So a lot of the money that he's making through all of his businesses are going back to local businesses and back to sports programs that are just here in the Saskatchewan area.
Awesome,
yeah, so like
Doesn't he give discounts to local athletes?
Ooh, yes, he does.
20% off?
20% off.
Wow.
Look at that. Yeah,
Learning.
man. So part of our top secret mission, we've been doing some promo stuff that if you are not already following Rest When Dead Clothing on Instagram, do that. Go to restwhendead.ca to see all of the clothing line. Then you go to ceofit.ca for all the supplements. We've been like smashing some sweet energy drinks, some sampling a whole bunch of different supplements, man. And we've been having a hell of a time the last couple days. And that's kind of part of the reason why we come together here as a team. And it's been fun.
I don't want to leave.
I know.
Yeah, I'm not ready to go yet. I'll be honest with you.
It is too
Yeah.
short.
Yeah.
Next time we do this, I think we got to do like a 3-day,
At
least
Yeah.
3-day
Yeah,
deal.
yeah.
Yeah, the food's been great.
Food's been
we've been
fantastic.
Right?
spoiled.
Oh man, we just ate. So it's called Hot Diggity, and we sadly heard that this Hot Diggity here in Moose Jaw is probably going to be going out of business. If you're listening to this right now, you're in Moose Jaw area, go to Hot Diggity, get yourself the dill burger.
Tommy Boy.
The Tommy Boy.
Yeah,
It's called.
it's a
The Tommy Boy dill
Yeah.
burger.
Yes,
Oh
yeah.
man, so that's
Super
one of the reasons why
pickled
Oh, so good.
we're all gonna have a carb nap. So we decided to start smashing some of these energy drinks so we don't fall asleep as these Tommy Boy burgers hit us.
So much
Mm-hmm.
energy.
So, me and my infinite preparedness as a host of my own podcast have done zero prep for this because what I mean.
Shocker.
So normally what I
I'm
do.
shocked.
You're shocked by this?
No, I'm definitely not.
Okay.
No,
I am.
not at all. Not even close.
Okay,
You're
so
professional.
well, I am a professional, but I'm counting on my years of experience in professionalism to carry me through this, Jody, because I thought I don't want this to be an interview, because none of my conversations with people are interviews. They're conversations. So this isn't an interview. I'm not going to interview you all individually. That's not going to work. We've had some awesome conversations the last couple days. That's what we're going to continue to do here. However, the theme of the show is wrestling is life and life is wrestling. It's the name of the show. It's Wrestling is Life is Wrestling, because in my journey of being a professional wrestler, I've learned so many valuable life lessons, and I'm continuing to learn. I've learned even a lot over the last couple days here in Moose Jaw, and I think that people out there that are not even involved in the wrestling business, or maybe not even a wrestling fan, can glean something from the lessons of professional wrestlers, because we all live a very unique life and we all have a very unique journey. So normally when I'm sitting down with just one guest, I'm kind of going through their journey and their story. I did this with Steve, and I got just amazing positive feedback of wrestling fans and non-wrestling fans alike who were fascinated by Steve's story, but also kind of saw some of themselves in Steve's journey, even though he has a very unique and journey like nobody else. But it helped them in some way, which I think is really cool. So I'm kind of going to do a version of that with all of us, but rather than do that with everybody individually, I think if we just start with, I think the best place to start is kind of for our passion for wrestling, and then we'll kind of just see where that goes and where that conversation leads us. Even you and I, Jody, even at breakfast this morning, we had a great conversation about things that were really about life, but also about wrestling, because we're wrestlers. Right. Everything is wrestling related, because I know for me, I have wrestler brain, and everything connects back to professional wrestling for me.
Oh, absolutely.
Right? So I'm just hoping that that's what'll just naturally happen through this conversation, and we can kind of just jump in whenever. Like, it's a conversation. It's not going to be like an interview. So I'll start with a question. We'll see where this goes, and I'm kind of really interested to see where this is going to go, because if we want to start at our passion for professional wrestling, when you became a professional wrestling fan for the very first time, who was your number one guy or girl? Who was your number one favorite wrestler? The wrestler that made you fall in love with professional wrestling, and why? Jody, ladies first.
Oh. Well, I feel like I'm not a good person to start with, because my story is super weird.
This is perfect. Maybe no one's even going to get to their answer, because you're going to give us a weird answer, and then it's going to take. We're going to sit. Yeah.
Every dude is like Hulk Hogan.
That's so my answer.
That's my answer too.
Is it actually?
That's what I'm saying. Like,
okay, so there you go. So we're all done. We all just said.
You say Hulk Hogan. I'm gonna throw you off this balcony.
Oh God.
Okay, so we're gonna do a quick rapid fire of the other three guys, and then we're gonna get to your better answer. Mine's Hulk Hogan, probably just because of charisma and this color scheme. Yeah. That's my answer. Steve, why Hulk Hogan?
Got to be the same thing. Charisma, mostly charisma, not necessarily the color scheme, although that was attractive. But I probably wouldn't have figured that out at the moment, because I'm 5 years old when I'm watching.
Yeah,
it,
right.
But Hogan just he was the main star. He was the focal point. Mm-hmm. So you immediately, whether you knew it or not, you're like, this is the guy. That's the one. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, definitely Hogan for me.
Sure. Jake, why Hogan?
I think it was because his skin resembles hot dog skin, and I love food. No. He always wins. He beats everybody up. He's big and strong. I admire that, and I wanted to be that, so that's it. And the hot dog thing.
Okay, so that's the quick, really dumb gorilla guy brain answer. It's just like, colors and then hot dog
But
stuff.
did you guys see Hulk Hogan and we're just like, yes?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I mean, quite literally.
So this was your TV. Yes moment.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so we are
100%.
talking about
Like,
yeah.
Interesting. I wonder if this is like a difference in like minds of like male versus female.
It might be.
Probably that and time when you started watching wrestling.
Yeah.
You know.
So who's it for you?
I can't even say it was who. It was a situation.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Explain.
I'm so interested.
Me too.
Yeah. So I didn't grow up watching wrestling.
Okay.
Weird, right?
Yes and no.
I was literally drunk
Okay.
in Toronto,
How old were you?
like 28, 29.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
This is more recent than I thought.
Yeah, okay. I was thinking you're maybe going to be a teenager.
Are you
Okay.
ready for this? Walking down Queen Street in Toronto, Queen West specifically. It's like a bar district.
Yes.
With my sister, who had just had like a big breakup. And so we were just looking for a fun time. I think we were buzzed on like wine or something.
Okay.
And there was literally a handwritten sandwich board out the front of a venue, the Great Hall in Toronto. And I know this venue
That's my
through
stomping
music.
grounds.
Okay,
Yes.
through music. And I was like, what? Live wrestling? Where I watch music? What the fuck?
Yeah.
And then I realized, because I watch my music upstairs, it's like a beautiful hall. Like, it's
Yeah,
like a
yeah.
really nice
I
place.
just wrestled there.
Yeah.
That's where Super Kicked is, right? At the Great
Yeah,
Hall?
yeah.
Also,
I
that
just-
is my favorite venue.
Yeah,
There's
it's a-
several levels with several halls.
Yeah.
And so downstairs this is where I learned that the Great Hall actually has a downstairs. And I literally drunkenly walked into this venue because of a sandwich board with my sister, pay the ticket money, stumble down the creaky stairs, and
Wait, the show was going on?
yes.
Whoa.
Yes,
What are
yes.
the chances of
Yes,
that?
and I would
Okay.
say like we were like probably halfway into the show at this point because it's like crowded. People are going, well, I'm like, what the fuck is this?
Yeah, yeah.
Was I wrestling?
You might have been. I'll tell you who was in the ring.
Your answer was Jake something. Everyone's answer was Hulk Hogan. And Jody's
something.
building up to my yes was Jake something.
I'm actually going to kind of be disappointed if that isn't the answer now.
Yeah.
Say the line.
But yeah, I walked in buzzing. This is going crazy. Like you've been like
Yeah.
you've been to like punk shows.
Yes.
And you know that energy and like you metal shows and you too. Like,
Yeah, metal shows,
right. You
punk
know,
rock
there's
shows,
like there's
yeah.
a certain sort of like energy that's there when like a band's going and like the pit's going and that like wildness. It's very unique energy and you don't really find it anywhere else. You really don't. I found it in this wrestling and it like the match ended, but it was like the end, and then the next set of people came out and like it was like a whoosh of like this crazy like energy that like I only recognized from like punk shows, and I was like, whoa, this is wild. And then like it was Shane Saber, Tarek, Ash,
Yeah, I was going to say, it's
and
got to be
Chris,
Ash, right? Yeah.
and it was a tag match with them, and it was like within like the first few bumps, I was like, oh, this is my calling. Like it was literally like a yes, like that was my
Really?
yes. That was literally my yes. Was that the
awesome.
energy, specifically the energy that I experienced there?
So there's something about that because I think that is probably the exact reason my answer is Hulk Hogan, but it's like the 5-year-old version
Yeah.
of that energy because
Yeah.
that's what Hogan was.
Yeah.
He was energy.
Yeah.
And he was so charismatic
Yeah.
that energy came in through the screen into my living room and
Yeah.
injected me with this feeling. And I
Yeah.
talk about this all the time when I talk about wrestling. Like, it's not about the moves, it's about the feeling.
The
And then a lot of young wrestlers are like, well, what do you mean by that? It's like, this is what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Like that feeling that whatever that yes moment gave you was like, oh my God, you can't even put a word to the feeling, but you know what that is. It's just
Yeah.
this energy
Yeah.
that's kind of hard to describe that not everybody gets.
It's
but-
almost like a soulmate thing. Like
Yeah,
You feel it, you're
yeah,
like, oh, wow,
yeah.
that's it.
I remember I was like, whoa,
Yeah.
yes, this is what like literally yes came to my brain.
So you decided in that moment that you were going to make this part of your life and like start like pursue this, or how does
So
this?
this is how crazy this story is. So I had my yes moment, and I'm sitting there sipping my beer, and I'm like, okay, and in my head I'm like thinking, and I'm like, okay, how does one do this? And I like took like 2 steps back, and I hit a pillar behind me, and there's a fucking poster. It's like, you want to be a pro wrestler? Sign up here. And I'm not going to name the school because I ended up going somewhere better, but at least my first few months were at this school. you know?
and
Yeah,
it was all serendipitous.
Yes,
it was
yes,
meant
yes.
to
It
be.
led me
Still,
to,
it
like,
led to
a
where you are
proper-
right now.
yes,
with
yes,
also,
yes.
you're good.
A lot of people do that too. Like whatever school they start with,
Yeah.
it's just where they start, and then they go on
Yeah,
to
yeah.
other places.
Yeah.
But I couldn't even imagine, like, again, like I took a step and like my answer was behind me. You know what I mean?
Oh my God,
That's awesome. It's like
Yeah.
everything was such gotcha happens.
Your
The fact
future
that
was right in front of you,
Yeah,
and the answer of how to get there was right behind you.
The fact that you saw on a sign like, oh, wrestling, and it was going at that moment.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
And
So-
that you saw like that perfect blend too, because for anyone that doesn't know Superkicked, that's a one of a kind show.
It is.
It truly
Yeah, it's
is.
weird,
It
yeah.
is a music vibe and a wrestling vibe, and that's what the crowd is.
Yeah.
There's no chairs. It's all you're standing up, beating on the mat.
Yes.
Like it's a very intimate music setting. So it's crazy that that's what you stumbled into, because that's like tailored for you.
Yeah.
You know?
Absolutely.
So you weren't even familiar with professional wrestling before that, or like what was what was pro wrestling to you before that?
Nothing. It was literally, I remember, like, obviously I grew up my, like, junior years of school during, like, the Attitude Era.
Okay. I want to take a quick time out from the show to talk to you about an awesome product. It's review time. I'm going to review Era protein powder for hot coffee by a company called Magnum Essentials. Yes, this is protein coffee powder. And you can get it at ceofit.ca. Guys, I have been using this protein powder for my coffee for the last few weeks. And let me tell you, it is awesome. It is 0 grams of sugar. It's all natural flavors. It's clump free. That's key. When I'm like, protein powder in my coffee? Really? Isn't that going to get all clumpy and chalky? No, it's clump free. It's hydrolyzed whey protein. Every scoop, just for a little scoop, it's 10 grams of protein. You can put 2 scoops in there. You want to get that full 20 grams of protein in your morning coffee? Go ahead and do that. I suggest this product that I'm holding up right now for you audio listeners. You got to go to youtube.com at Cody Diener Podcast to see this, but it is caramel, 25 servings per bin, and it's a caramel flavored. It is so awesome. It's like almost like a not so sweet caramel macchiato in your mouth if you go to Starbucks. It's like so wicked awesome. It's a Canadian company. Magnum Essentials is from Surrey, BC, and it says here that it's inspired by the Swedish word for glory, era. Our specifically crafted hydrolyzed whey protein integrates perfectly with your hot beverage, delivering smooth, delicious nutrition. Elevate your daily coffee ritual with Era. It's very easy. You just make your potted coffee, you put in 1 scoop of this hydrolyzed whey protein, and you're off to the races. It is so good. It's so tasty, and you can get it right now. Where? Go to ceofit.ca. They've got tons of Canadian companies that have quality products just like Magnum Essentials here. I highly recommend it. If you don't want to get like a scoop out of this bin here, they also sell individualized packets of the 10-gram serving, so you can get just little packets. You can travel with them, take them on the go, so even when you're on the road, you can bring your protein powder for your coffee with you. Get your pump on, get your coffee on, get that caffeine fix, get your caramel flavored, get your Era protein powder for hot coffee today by Magnum Essentials, and get it at ceofit.ca. Where? ceofit.ca.
And so the boys would be like, let's play wrestling. And I'm like, what the fuck's wrestling? And they're like, you could be China, beat us up. And I'm like, okay, pop, pop, pop. You know, like
Yes.
shoot, beating them up.
Sure.
And not even like realizing what it is. Like I remember once.
And that's what you still do. It's great.
Not much has changed. It's obvious. All right.
A little stiff, it's okay.
Little Gene Stipsky.
Safe. But yeah, like I remember going to like a wrestling like birthday party, and again like it was on the screen, but not really understanding. I just remember like, you know, we hit this kid over the head with like a light just because we were fighting, not wrestling, you know. And then I remember like a few times like throughout my life, like someone's like, oh, you're gonna be a wrestler. Like this is what's even more crazy is like random people like, oh, you'd be like a fucking sick wrestler. Like just throughout my life, and like me being like, oh, whatever, you know, let me go to school and be something else. And
So I can relate to that in that I was told at a very young age, when I was like 5, when I was I went to my babysitter. Her name was Joan. She was an old lady that smoked, like, chain smoked cigarettes, and she talked like this.
I love it.
She was like a cartoon character, and I was like, I would love wrestling, and I would love, like, putting on performances when she would babysit me. And every time my mom would come pick me up, she would tell my mom, she goes, one day that kid's gonna be a preacher. He's gonna be a preacher someday. And I feel like, honestly, like, she was speaking a thing into being, because it all led to me eventually. Now I travel around the world speaking, and, like, kind of in a way, like, preaching, like good messages to kids.
That's how your wrestling is too.
Yeah.
You are a preacher wrestler,
Right?
I don't know how else to explain that.
That's interesting that you're saying that.
That's what I like. That's how I would.
What do you mean by that? I'm curious, because that's a very.
It's the way you speak and project, but it's like while you're wrestling. What
like
you say,
okay.
pull them in. That's how you pull them in. Even with your merch sales. Like you're preaching. You're bringing them in.
Bringing them in.
They're buying what you're selling. They believe in what you're
interesting.
saying. But it's also because it's genuine.
Yes.
It's not an act. It's that's how you are. And then, so it's cool.
So there's a lot of similarities between the two as well. Like, you have to be charismatic to be a preacher as well.
An effective one, I think.
Yeah, I think so.
For sure.
I think so. Especially, well, I mean, preachers who believe in what they're talking about are naturally, I think, charismatic based off of that belief and that passion.
That's right.
And you have that as well. But it's also, like, I'm thinking, even from a physical standpoint, when you're in the ring, even if you're going to cut a promo, or maybe you're wrestling a one-on-one match, you'll do a thing where you'll circle around the entire ring, and you'll essentially gather all of the audience by circling around the ring, looking at everybody, and then coming back to the camera and looking at the camera and cutting your promo or whatever it is. If you don't take that lap, if you don't do that circle, you don't necessarily draw those people in, but you're a master at doing that. And it's something I think now you don't do it consciously because you've been doing it for so long, but it comes across so natural and it's so easy. And I see the similarities
a
easily.
Preacher with or without your words.
Right. Okay, so I didn't ask this question because I want you guys to put me over, but this is going really well. We can continue this along this line.
I wonder if you guys think I'm jacked.
Because
your arms are so big.
Well, the reason I even said that, I wanted to, like, relate to what you were saying, Jody, because I believe that there's, like, almost like hints in our life that kind of, when in retrospect we look back at it and go, oh, that makes sense. Why that person said that is now happening, and I don't believe in coincidences. So it's like her saying, oh, you're gonna preach her one day, and now I'm speaking and I'm doing this thing, and you're saying I have all these characteristics of what my chain smoking babysitter said to me when I was 5 is pretty cool. And then you had these people telling you, that you were going to be a wrestler, and you're whatever. That's like in one year out the other, but it still, like, put something in your heart, your spirit, your soul. Something it spoke to you without you even realizing it, I think. Steve, I wanted to ask that, like, is there something like that for you, Steve and Jake, like in your childhood or in your upbringing, or something that's like that was spoken about what you were going to do or what you were going to be that has kind of come to fruition?
So, not really. I had kind of the opposite in the sense of, like, my mom was very supportive of my idea or dream to be a wrestler, but that's
a thing.
Yeah,
that's important. That's a thing. That's very important.
But I've had teachers, like, actually laugh at me with the idea of, like, what are you going to do? You better get your studies done. Because if you think you're just going to be a pro wrestler, that's, blah,
I had
blah,
the same,
blah.
though. I did have that, too. I had probably more naysayers than the positive ones, so I can relate to that as well.
Granted, like, I mean, I'm legally blind. I'm 130 pounds in high school. Like, I don't look like a pro wrestler, especially then, right?
Sure.
So, but we've spoken about this before.
To me.
We've spoken about this before. That can be fuel if you let it.
Yeah.
Right? And that can be fucking watch me.
Right.
I'm going to do it. You watch me.
No, 100%. The fuel for sure.
Yeah.
Then I guess that's an interesting point, because that's, like you said, it's almost the opposite, but in some ways not.
If someone tells you no, what do you want to do? You want to do yes.
Because that's the case for all of us at this table right now, but that's not the case for everybody.
Right.
It's I always had
I didn't have any detractors at all.
Really?
Yeah, I mean.
Did you have moments or certain people that were speaking into your life or maybe dropping hints? Like, did people think you were going to be a wrestler, or what do you mean by support or non-detractors?
That's been my only answer is wrestling, like forever. I mean, I think even my wrestling anniversary was on Cinco de Mayo.
Awesome.
And, like, and I posted like
happy
some
wrestling
cool pictures,
birthday.
like,
Yeah,
thank you.
man, sweet.
I posted some pictures like just throughout the career, but one of them I posted was a picture of me when I was like 5 flexing. That the entirety of my life is like, I'm gonna be a wrestler. Like that's what I watch. I watched it with my mom. Like my grandma watched it. Like, all of them, and even like for just like my dad, he wants me to be tough. He's like, all right, be badass, be tough.
Right.
Don't take no shit.
Yeah.
Beat some ass, and that's just what it's always been. So, and I'm sure maybe a teacher or two maybe scoffed at it, but I'm almost scoffing. I'm like, oh, you're the fucking idiot. Like that's what I'm gonna do. Like I assure you, that's what it is.
So it's funny that you say that because, like you said that, you kind of wrestle like a preacher in that way that she said it. You also wrestle like your dad told you to be.
Yeah.
Like, don't
Shit
take
kicker,
shit,
baby.
Just kick the shit out of people. Take no prisoners. No BS. No frills.
Also, for the
just
record,
go.
that's how my mom is too. She don't play.
Yeah.
She's like someone, especially if someone were to try to talk shit to me.
Yeah.
You don't want to mess with me. You don't want to mess with my mom.
Yeah.
I love this.
So what is it about? So that I find that it's interesting, and maybe this is the answer. And I've asked this question to every one of my guests, and I'd like to get your guys' opinion on this. I often ask, like, what is it about you that made you decide, I can do this? Because there's millions of wrestling fans and only thousands of wrestlers. So there's something about the people that decide, I'm going to do this, that there's something about them, I think, not all of them, but the ones that I think actually make it and become somewhat successful at it, there's something about them that makes that possible for them, or at least gave them the confidence to even try it. I'm wondering if the answer is what you said, Jake, in that, you're saying no? Well, fuck you, I'm going to show you. That's not what everybody has, but all of us here do.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
We all had that. So, like, I had the same, Steve. I had teachers that laughed at me. People in the small town that I live in the middle of nowhere laughed at me. My grade 12 guns counselor laughed at me and said, you're not going to be a wrestler, so we're going to pick something else for you.
What's her name?
I'm not going to say. And honestly, I think I might even put it out of my brain because those people I just like.
That name doesn't matter.
That name doesn't even matter to me.
I'd write her a letter.
Yeah.
Like, guess what, bitch?
I should. Well, that shows your attitude, Jody, and that's the kind of attitude I'm talking about, though. Like, it's like that kind of like, screw you attitude. That's like, no, I'll show you. We all have that. Is that what it is? You think, or is there something else to it? You have an idea?
Yes, it's a multitude of things because wrestling isn't a one facet thing, right? So like I have the passion and the heart and the belief in myself that I can do this. I just knew that I can do this. And I meet kids all the time who come to my wrestling school, Net Pro Studios, that are the same, and they have this heart and they have this passion. They want to do it, and they've been fans for so long. But it also you have to be an athlete to do this, especially nowadays. And as wrestling continues to grow into the future, I think that's just going to continuously escalate. Yeah. And so it's one thing for me to show up to Eric Young's WrestlePlex in Cambridge, Ontario, and say, I'm going to be a wrestler. I have the passion for this. I have the heart for this. I've been a fan forever. But then it's another thing for him to say, okay, well, here's the drills, here's what we're doing, and here's how to do it. And then I have to successfully do that. So point is like when I did, I attached myself to pro wrestling very quickly. Like it was easy for me to do a lot of things when it was asked, hey, we need you to do a leapfrog, or we need you to do this drop down tackle, hip toss, arm drag. Here's how you do it. I picked up on it very, very quickly, which in turn just boosted my confidence even more.
Right.
There are people out there who can have the same passion, heart, and drive, but if they don't have the athletic ability, it's going to be a much more bigger hill to climb for them in order to achieve what they want and to be successful. So it takes both.
Absolutely. I think, yes, for sure. Do you have something to add to that, Jake?
Yeah.
Or an idea that you had said thinking before that? Yeah.
Because that's spot on, too. But obviously, like, along a wide array of wrestlers, there's going to be a lot of different answers, but I almost think that when it comes to successful wrestlers, for the most part, the common denominator is going to be a willingness to fail and keep going. Because I think there was 9 people in our class. Eventually there was 3, you know? So it's like, failure can either make you better or it can make you quit.
Yep.
And I can't think of any successful wrestler that just nailed it the first try.
Oh,
and
man,
just kept
what a good
going,
answer.
Right?
I agree with
so
that
I feel
wholeheartedly.
like it's the failure. Because, again, like I said, I didn't really have anyone saying I couldn't. Maybe a couple, but I almost just like I was laughing at them for even thinking that it wouldn't happen, right? But like Steve said, too, I picked up on stuff pretty easily in terms of athletics, but seeing how this has always been my answer, I wrestled before I was trained. I worked out before I was trained. I worked out since I was a child. Like, this is what I've always wanted. So I'm like, okay. So I had like an aptitude for it.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
But, even if I sucked, like if I had no skills for it whatsoever, I would just be like, all right, well, I got to get better. I'll keep going.
Yeah.
That's my attitude for like anything. If I want to do something and I don't care if I'm bad at it, I'm going to keep trying,
Yeah.
And I think that's the common denominator, even between if you're good or not, because there's people that aren't very good at this that can be very successful.
That's right. Yeah.
And that's not a bad thing to me. That's because they keep fucking going.
Yeah.
Willingness to fail and keep going.
Or they find that positive, that, like they always talk about, like, a successful promoter is the one that finds the positive in the wrestler and then accents the positive and hides the negative. Right? Like Paul Heyman was the master of that. Like someone, who can only do a choke slam and is really tall. Oh, well, you're 911 and you just choke slam dudes, and then they're the coolest thing ever, right?
And he's right.
Yeah,
cool.
Right. So it's like, so we'll just find that thing. Some wrestlers that maybe don't have a higher athletic aptitude for it, Steve, maybe can find a way to be involved in it somehow.
Yes.
I say that, and I stress that to my students as well. Like, hey, listen, this is a hard thing to do. So if you're not getting something right the first class or the first 3 classes or the first 30 classes, if you really want to do it, keep doing it. Also, if you find that the physical part of pro wrestling isn't for you, there is a place in pro wrestling for you somewhere. Like, there's so many wrestlers who I've seen come to classes and come to schools and want to be wrestlers, end up being referees or end up being like production dudes or something along that line. And they still love pro wrestling and they still get to travel with the guys and all that stuff too. So like they still get to do the things that pro wrestlers do. They just don't have to abuse their body like we do. So in a way, they're almost better off in certain sense, right?
Yeah.
And to kind of piggyback off this and maybe like add a little too, even when I was saying like a willingness to like fail but try to get better and keep going, and just keep going, there's a difference between that and people that just like stick around. Because there's sometimes, I'm sure we've all met people that have been wrestling for 20, 30 years in the same spot. That's not it either. That's you've taken a failure and you haven't adjusted positively or negatively from it. You've stayed.
You just stayed.
And you repeat maybe the same mistakes over and over again. That's just staying constant. You have to be able to take failure, examine it, and grow from it.
Right.
That's what it has to be.
What's your perspective on this, Jody? Because I think you might have a different one. Because when I started training, I was 18. Yeah. You were young too, right, Jake? Like you were 18. Steve, you were 18. We were all you had 10 years of life and like growing, and like you do a lot of growing and changing in your 20s.
Yeah.
And a lot of failures and a lot of like learning from it, like the things that Jake's saying. Like, do you think that is the, I guess, ingredient to success in wrestling, or do you have another idea to add on to things that we're already saying?
I think for me, like Jake, you kind of nailed it. It's like the people that just are consistent, and it's like, okay, it's kind of cliche. You fall down, you pick yourself back up, you dust it off, and you try and going again, but like adjust accordingly. And you just got to keep going, and it's almost like you have to just know. Like for me, like in that moment when I said yes, I knew, and that might sound kind of cocky, but I was like, oh, I can do, like, I literally remember like thinking like my next thought is like, how do I do this? I could fucking do this. And then like I haven't talked about a lot of the ups and downs like in my career, especially with that first school I was talking about. Like a lot of like shitty things happened, and I feel like a lot of people in my position would have probably quit and just like, okay, not for me kind of thing. But like I knew so much that like, I can do this. That it was just that, okay, this didn't work. Okay, Where do we go? Okay, let's go here.
Do you think not being an 18-year-old kid doing it almost benefited you then?
100%, especially as being like a female. Like
Yeah.
I kudos to anyone. I guess you three, growing up in this business, it blows my mind. And I have this conversation with so many people, like. Even when I was a grown-ass woman getting into this business, and it like made me question things about myself, and I was like super confident and like fine, and like it really made me question some things about myself, and I had to give my head a shake and be like, no, this there's some like fucked up shit going on here. So
Yes.
imagine being like 16, even sometimes 17, like even 18, 19, 20, and like you said, you grow so much in your 20s, and like this like weird shit is being said to you. And also you have like children growing up with like adults who grew up in this fucked up industry, like it. I do think I was at an advantage coming in as like a grown up, for sure.
I'm interested in your answer to this one then, because as you're saying everything you just said, I'm realizing how true it is that wrestling is life and life is wrestling, and that wrestling is a microcosm for life, because I learned at such a young age, being in the business and going, oh wait, this business is fucked up. There's weird people here. There's people that are like snakes. There's people that are going to try to betray me. There's like dirtbags, all those things. Yeah. That is true in life.
Yeah.
Those people are everywhere.
Yes.
And if I might have been naive to that, if I wouldn't have learned that in wrestling. So wrestling taught me that is a reality everywhere. It's just like very kind of almost unique or even crazier in wrestling somehow. Maybe
it's turned up.
It's just maybe just turned up, but it's
highlighted,
like
I would say.
maybe highlighted or something,
Yeah.
because it's just a weird, strange business with people wrestling in spandex. It's just weird. It brings out weird people in weird situations.
No guidelines or rules, really.
Exactly. Yeah, so it's just so weird. But like because I learned that at such a young age, it taught me so much about life that I think it's.
But you're lucky. You're one of the lucky ones that were able to like.
I guess,
use
but like
that
because you didn't have that.
Yeah.
But like, has that helped you since then? Because, like, did it change? I guess here's the simple question: did it change your life perspective? Getting into wrestling and realizing those things.
I think because I've lived like a pretty full life up until that point. Like I think I was just like equipped, and it kind of just reassured how I navigated life.
That's going to do it for another episode of Wrestling is Life is Wrestling with Cody Diener in part 1 with the Rest When Dead Skeleton crew. We're going to stop there in the middle of this awesome conversation. If you want to get the rest of this conversation, and you do, trust me, then come on back next week for part 2, or better yet, you don't want to wait till next week. Why don't you get a free trial over at patreon.com/Cody Diener right now, and you can listen and watch both audio and video of the full conversation early and ad-free right now by getting a free trial at patreon.com/Cody Diener. If you don't want to do that, that's cool. We'll see you next week for part 2. Don't you dare miss it. I think there's another way you can support me. How about you go to prowrestlingtees.com/Cody Diener or cameo.com/Cody Diener. Get yourself a personalized video, or you know what? Better yet, support my sponsors. The reason that we were able to get together and have this awesome conversation was because of Rest When Dead clothing. Go to Rest When Dead clothing on Instagram, or shop the entire collection right now at restwhendead.ca. Or you might need some supplements. You want to get to the next level in your workout game. Why don't you head on over to ceofit.ca. Check out their collection of top of the line, world-renowned supplements, and they will ship them directly to your door, in some cases even for free. That's ceofit.ca. Now, if you would like to book me on your independent wrestling show, hit me up. Book Cody at CodyDiener.com. That's book Cody at CodyDiener.com. I am very busy on the indies. I have such an awesome schedule. Let me just tell you some of the places I'm going to be going over the next number of days. This Friday, May 24th, I'll be in Toronto with Super Kicked Wrestling. The following day, Saturday, May 25th, I'll be with CWF in St. Catharines, Ontario, hyping and on the road to their big annual event in August for Wrestolution. Then the following weekend on June 1st, I'll be in Collingwood, Ontario with Rock Solid Wrestling, and I'll be tagging with, hey, somebody you listened to today, with my buddy Crazy Steve, as well as a good friend of mine who has a lot of history with me. If you're ever watching TNA Wrestling, Eric Young. We'll be in a big 6-man tag matchup. That's Rock Solid Wrestling. Google that if you want to get your tickets. They're still available. The following weekend on June 9th, I'll be in Niagara Falls, Ontario for Neo Wrestling. Big show happening there. Then the following weekend, June 14th and 15th, I'll be in Chicago for the big TNA Wrestling television tapings as well. On the 14th, it's Against All Odds. You want more info on that? Head on over to TNAWrestling.com. On June 22nd, I will be back in Hamilton, Ontario, defending my Steel City Championship for Top Tier Wrestling. Then the following weekend, June 28th, 29th, I'll be back in Philly at the 2300 Arena, also known as the historic EC Dub Arena, for some more TNA television tapings. And then we're into July, and man, I could just keep going and going and going, but I do have some open dates on the weekends still, and even in June, and then into the summer. I'm filling up the schedule, so if you're an indie promoter, you want to book me, then why don't you do that? Book Cody at CodyDiener.com. I'm also a professional speaker. You hear me allude to this and a lot of the stories that I have to tell. If you are a teacher or a principal or an administrator or part of a youth group and you want to bring a world-renowned speaker who's traveled all across the nation, spoken to literally hundreds of thousands of youth, well, I would love it if you would consider me. If you want to know more about my speaking journey, the topics that I have to offer, as well as read some testimonials from satisfied clients who have brought me to their school or place of business, why don't you head on over to chrisgrayspeaks.com. That's Gray with an A, chrisgrayspeaks.com right now, and you can learn more about how you can bring me to your event to do a keynote presentation, assembly presentation at your school, seminars, workshops. I got all kinds of stuff. So head on over to chrisgrayspeaks.com right now and learn more about that. I am super excited for next week's episode as we continue to dive deep in this life conversation with Jody Threat, Jake Something, and Crazy Steve. So until next week, thank you guys for joining me for another episode. And you know that on this week's episode, as well as next week's episode, as we continue this conversation, you are going to learn the same thing you learn every time you tune into this show. And that is that wrestling is life, is wrestling. We'll see you next week, guys.
Wrestling is life. Wrestling is life. Wrestling is life, is wrestling.